The transport ship shook as it entered the docking bay of Station Meridian 7. Inside, 44 recruits sat in rows of metal seats, their bodies strapped in tight. Some were nervous. Some were excited. And one was just trying to stay awake. Jake Thompson rubbed his eyes and looked out the small window. The station was massive. It floated in space like a metal city, with lights blinking across its surface. Ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Jake had seen pictures of space stations before, but seeing one in person was different. It made him feel small. The ship landed with a heavy thud. The straps released automatically, and the recruit stood up. Jake stretched his arms above his head, his joints cracking loudly. A few aliens nearby looked at him with concern. "Are you injured?" asked a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. "No, just stiff," Jake said with a smile. "Long flight." The creature did not seem to understand, but nodded anyway. Jake grabbed his bag and followed the others toward the exit. He was the only human on the ship. Actually, he was one of the first humans to ever train with the Galactic Coalition. Earth had only joined the galactic community 2 years ago, and most species still did not know much about humans. Jake did not know much about aliens either, so he figured they were even. The doors opened, and Jake stepped onto the station floor. The air was clean but had a strange smell, like metal and flowers mixed together. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth, which made Jake feel like he could jump higher. He resisted the urge to try. A group of officers stood waiting for them. They wore dark uniforms with symbols Jake did not recognize. At the front stood the tallest one. He was not like any creature Jake had ever seen. His body was covered in a hard shell, like an insect, and his head had 2 large eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His mouth had sharp parts that clicked together when he moved them. "Recruits," the insect officer shouted. His voice was deep and rough. "I am Commander Velox. For the next 6 months, this station is your home, your school, and your nightmare. You will train here. You will suffer here. And if you are lucky, you will leave here as soldiers." Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Commander Velox walked slowly along the line of recruits, looking at each one. When he reached Jake, he stopped. His large eyes studied the human for a long moment. "You are the human," Velox said. It was not a question. "Yes, sir," Jake replied. "I have read your file. Your species is new to us. Unproven." The commander's mouth parts clicked. "We shall see what you are made of." He moved on without another word. Jake let out a breath he did not know he was holding. After the welcome speech, the recruits were taken to their living quarters. The rooms were small but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a small window looking out into space. Jake dropped his bag on the bed and sat down. The mattress was harder than he liked, but he had slept on worse. A knock came at his door. Jake opened it to find a small alien standing there. She was covered in silver fur, with large dark eyes that reminded him of a cat. Her ears were pointed and twitched slightly as she looked at him. "Hello," she said. Her voice was soft and musical. "I am Lyris. I am in the room next to yours." "Jake," he said, offering his hand. Lyris looked at his hand with confusion. Jake realized she did not know what a handshake was. "Sorry," he said, pulling his hand back. "On Earth, we shake hands when we meet someone. It is a greeting." "Oh." Lyris slowly extended her small hand. Jake took it gently and shook it once. Her fur was softer than he expected. "Nice to meet you, Lyris. Nice to meet you too, Jake." She smiled, showing small white teeth. "I wanted to ask you something. Is it true that your planet is a death world?" Jake blinked. "A what?" "A death world. A planet where everything is dangerous. Where the environment tries to kill you." Jake thought about it. He thought about the hurricanes that hit his hometown every few years. He thought about the bears in the mountains where he used to go camping. He thought about the time he got food poisoning from bad chicken. "I guess it can be dangerous sometimes," he said. "But it is home. I never really thought of it as a death world." Lyris looked at him with wide eyes. "You do not think your planet is dangerous? I mean, you have to be careful. But that is true everywhere, right?" She shook her head slowly. "My planet has no predators. The weather is always calm. We have never had a natural disaster." "That sounds nice," Jake said honestly. "Must be peaceful." "It is. But it also means my people are not strong. Not like yours." Jake shrugged. "I am not that strong. Just average, really." Lyris made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We will see." That night, Jake lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the window, he could see stars stretching out forever. He wondered what his family was doing back on Earth. He wondered if they could see the same stars. He had joined the coalition because he wanted to see the galaxy. He wanted to meet new species and have adventures. So far, everything was strange and new and a little scary. But Jake was not the type to give up easily. His father had always said the Thompsons were stubborn. They did not quit when things got hard. They'd put their heads down and push through. Jake closed his eyes and smiled. Tomorrow would be the first day of training. He did not know what to expect, but he was ready to find out. In the room next door, Lyris was writing in her personal log. She was documenting everything about the human. His strange greeting ritual. His casual attitude toward danger. The way he cracked his joints like it was normal. "First impression," she wrote. "The human seems friendly but strange. He does not understand that he comes from one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. He thinks it is normal. I do not know if this makes him brave or crazy. Perhaps both." She saved the entry and turned off the light. Somewhere in the station, Commander Velox was also reviewing files. He had trained thousands of recruits from dozens of species. He knew how to break them down and build them back up as soldiers. But humans were new, unknown. The report said they came from a high-gravity world filled with dangers. The report said they had evolved as persistence predators, hunting their prey by chasing it until it collapsed from exhaustion. The report said they kept dangerous animals as pets and ate poisonous plants for fun. Velox did not fully believe the reports. They sounded exaggerated. No species could be that strange. Tomorrow, the assessments would begin. Tomorrow, he would see for himself what humans were capable of. He clicked his mandibles in anticipation. Tomorrow would be interesting. The alarm rang at 5 in the morning. Jake groaned and rolled out of bed. His body was still on Earth time, and Earth time said it was the middle of the night. But training did not care about Earth time. He washed his face, put on his uniform, and stepped into the hallway. Other recruits were already walking toward the training hall. Some looked tired. Some looked scared. A few looked excited. Lyris appeared beside him, her silver fur slightly messy from sleep. "Good morning, Jake." "Morning. Did you sleep well?" "Not really. I am nervous about the assessments." "Yeah, me too," Jake admitted. "But we will get through it together." Lyris smiled at that. It was nice to have a friend. The training hall was enormous. It was bigger than any gym Jake had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadows. Strange machines filled the space, each one designed for a different kind of test. Jake saw climbing walls, running tracks, swimming pools, and things he could not even identify. Commander Velox stood at the center of the hall with several other officers. He waited until all the recruits had gathered before speaking. "Today begins your physical assessment," he announced. "You will be tested on strength, speed, endurance, and adaptability. Your scores will determine your training path. Fail too many tests, and you will be sent home. A wave of nervous energy passed through the crowd. First test, standard lift assessment. You will approach the platform one at a time. Lift a weight. Hold it for as long as you can. The machine will measure your strength and strain level. Jake looked at the platform. A large metal cylinder sat on it, about the size of a car engine. It did not look that heavy to him, but he figured there was more to it than appearance. The weight is calibrated to moderate difficulty, Velox continued. Approximately 200 kilograms in human measurements. This is considered challenging for most species. 200 kilograms. Jake did the math in his head. That was about 440 pounds. Heavy, but not impossible. He had lifted similar weights back when he worked construction. The first recruit was called Ford. It was a Fenari, one of Lyris's people. The small alien walked up to the platform, wrapped her arms around the cylinder, and pulled with all her strength. The cylinder lifted a few inches off the ground. The Fenari's arms shook badly. Her face twisted with effort. Then she dropped it and stepped back, breathing hard. Partial completion, the machine announced. Strain index, 94%. The Fenari walked away with her head down. Lyris looked worried. Next came a Stellan, a thin creature with a large head and small body. They could not lift it at all. The machine recorded 0 completion. Then came Grundar, a Morvathi. Jake had noticed him earlier. He was huge, nearly 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin like a rhinoceros. Surely he would have no problem. Grundar grabbed the cylinder with both massive hands. His muscles bulged. Veins stood out on his neck. With a grunt of effort, he lifted the weight to his waist. 1, 2, 3. The machine counted. Grundar dropped it with a crash. He was breathing like he had just run a marathon. Full completion, the machine said. Hold time, 3.2 seconds. Strain index, 87%. The other recruits made sounds of approval. Grundar had done well. He had completed the test. More recruits went. Some completed the test. Many did not. Jake watched each one carefully, trying to understand the challenge. Finally, they called his name. Human, Jake Thompson, approached the platform. Jake walked forward. He could feel every eye in the room watching him. The new species. The unknown factor. He reached the platform and looked at the cylinder. It was solid metal, smooth and cold. He bent down and gripped it with his right hand. Just his right hand. Then he stood up. The cylinder came with him. It hung at his side like a shopping bag. Jake held it there, feeling its weight. It was heavy, sure, but nothing special. He had carried heavier things on construction sites. He looked around at the silent room. Everyone was staring at him with expressions he did not understand. Is this the right weight? He asked. It feels kind of light. Nobody answered. The machine finally spoke. Full completion. Single limb. Hold time. Sustained. Strain index 12%. 12%. Jake was barely trying. Commander Velox stepped forward. His large eyes were fixed on Jake. His mandibles clicked rapidly. Put it down, he said quietly. Jake set the cylinder back on the platform gently. Now lift it with both hands. Jake shrugged, grabbed the cylinder with both hands, and lifted it above his head. He held it there like it was nothing, like he was raising a trophy. The room remained completely silent. Strain index, 8%, the machine reported. Velox raised one of his limbs. Stop. Put it down. Jake lowered the weight and set it back on the platform. He was starting to feel uncomfortable with all the staring. Did I do something wrong? He asked. The commander did not answer for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Report to my office after the assessments are complete. We need to talk." He walked away, leaving Jake standing alone on the platform. The assessments continued, but nobody was paying attention anymore. They were all whispering about what they had just seen. Lyris ran up to Jake as soon as he stepped off the platform. Her eyes were huge. "Jake, how did you do that?" "Do what?" "That weight. It is supposed to be difficult for the strongest species." Grundar nearly collapsed lifting it, and he is one of the most powerful beings on this station. Jake looked back at the platform. "Really? It did not feel that heavy to me." "Not that heavy?" Lyris grabbed his arm with both hands. "Jake, I could not even move it. Most of my people cannot even move it." "Oh," Jake scratched his head. "I guess. Humans are stronger than I thought." Around them, the whispers grew louder. Jake heard fragments of conversation. With one hand, barely trying. "What are humans?" "Death world species." Jake felt his face grow warm. He did not like being the center of attention. He was just a normal guy from Ohio. He had worked construction, played football in high school, and liked to go fishing on weekends. Nothing special dog, but apparently, in a galaxy full of aliens, being a normal human was very special indeed. The rest of the assessments passed in a blur. Jake completed every test easily. The speed test, the endurance test, the grip strength test. Each time, the machines recorded numbers that made the officers whisper to each other. By the end of the day, Jake Thompson had set 17 new station records. He had not even broken a sweat. That evening, he sat in his room and stared at his hands. They looked normal to him. Ordinary human hands. He had never thought of himself as strong. But in a universe where he was the first of his kind, ordinary had become extraordinary. A message appeared on his screen. It was from Commander Velox. "Report to my office. Now." Jake stood up and took a deep breath. He had a feeling his life was about to change. He was not wrong. Commander Velox's office was at the top of the station. The walls were covered with medals, certificates, and pictures of soldiers from many different species. A large window showed the stars outside. Jake stood at attention in front of the commander's desk. Velox sat behind it, his compound eyes studying the human like he was a puzzle. "Do you know why you are here, Private Thompson?" "Because of the assessment, sir." "Correct." Velox pressed a button. An hologram appeared above his desk. It showed Jake's test results. Every number was highlighted in red. "These numbers are impossible." Jake looked at the hologram. "Impossible, sir?" "The standard lift assessment is calibrated to challenge elite soldiers. Soldiers who have trained for years. Soldiers from species known for their physical power." Velox leaned forward. "You lifted it with one hand. On your first day, with no special training." "I used to work construction, sir. We lifted heavy things all the time." The commander made a clicking sound. "Construction. Manual labor. This is common on your planet?" "Yes, sir. Lots of people do physical work. And they can all lift 200 kilograms with one hand?" Jake thought about it. "Well, not everyone, but some guys at my job could. My friend Bobby could carry 2 bags of cement at once, and those weigh about 50 kilos each." Velox stared at him. "Your planet has many such individuals?" "I guess so. I never really counted." The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up more information on the hologram. It showed data about Earth. "Your planet has gravity 1.2 times the galactic average. Your atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen, which allows for greater physical performance. Your species evolved as persistence predators, meaning you can chase prey until it dies from exhaustion." He looked at Jake. "You are built for endurance and strength in ways most species cannot match." "I did not know that," Jake said honestly. "Of course you did not. To you, your abilities are normal. Velox stood up and walked to the window. Private Thompson, I have trained soldiers for 30 years. I have seen strong species and weak species, fast species and slow species. But I have never seen a species that does not know its own strength. Jake was not sure if that was a compliment or an insult. Standard training would be a waste for you, Velox continued. You would learn nothing. So I am moving you to the advanced division. You will train with soldiers who have years of experience. Jake blinked. But sir, I just got here. I do not know anything about being a soldier. You will learn, and your fellow recruits will learn from you. Velox turned back to face him. Humanity is new to the Coalition. You are the first of your kind to serve. How you perform will shape how the galaxy sees your entire species. The weight of those words hit Jake hard. He was not just representing himself. He was representing Earth, representing all of humanity. I will do my best, sir. See that you do. Dismissed. Jake walked back to his quarters in a daze. The hallways seemed longer than before. The stairs from other aliens seemed heavier by the time he reached his room. The news had already spread. His communication device was full of messages. Most were from recruits he had never met, asking questions about humans. Some were from officers requesting meetings. A few were from news services wanting interviews. Jake ignored them all. He needed to think. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Lyris and Grundar standing there. May we come in? Lyris asked. Jake stepped aside to let them enter. His room was small, so the three of them stood close together. We heard you are being moved to advanced training, Grundar said. His deep voice was surprisingly gentle for such a large creature. Word travels fast. On this station, yes. Grundar smiled, showing flat teeth. I wanted to say congratulations. And to ask you something. What? How? How is your species so strong? Jake sat down on his bed. I honestly do not know. Until today, I thought I was average. Maybe even below average. Below average. Lyris sounded shocked. Jake, you set 17 records today. 17. But on Earth, I was nothing special. I was just a regular guy. Grundar and Lyris exchanged a look. Tell us about Earth, Lyris said. Tell us what is normal there. Jake thought about how to explain. He thought about his hometown, his family, his life before joining the Coalition. Well, he started, I grew up in a place called Ohio. It is in the middle of my country. The weather changes a lot. Hot in summer, cold in winter. Sometimes we get storms. What kind of storms? Lyris asked. Tornadoes mostly. Big spinning winds that can destroy buildings. Both aliens looked horrified. And you live there? Grundar asked. With the building destroying winds? Well, yeah. You just have to be careful. We have warning systems and shelters. What else? Lyris was typing rapidly on her personal device, taking notes. We have some dangerous animals. Bears, wolves, snakes, mountain lions if you go out west. Are these predators? Yeah, but they usually leave you alone if you do not bother them. Grundar shook his head. On my planet, we have no predators. They all died out long ago. Really? That must be nice. It is peaceful. But it also means my people never had to be strong. Never had to fight to survive. Grundar looked at his own massive hands. I am considered very strong among my species. Today, I learned that I am not strong at all. Jake felt bad for him. Hey, you did great today. You completed the test. That is more than most people did. Yes, but you lifted it with one hand. One hand, Jake. Grundar laughed, but there was no humor in it. I have trained my whole life. You grew up doing construction work, and you are still stronger than me. Strength is not everything, Jake said. You seem smart, probably smarter than me. And you are kind. Those things matter too. Grunder was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, a real smile this time. You are a good person. Human. Thanks. You too, Morvathy. Lyris finished her notes and looked up. Jake, I think I understand now. Humans are strong because you have to be. Your planet forced you to evolve that way. Maybe. I never really thought about it. That is the most amazing part. Lyris's dark eyes were shining. You do not even realize how special you are. To you, being strong enough to lift cars is just normal. I cannot lift cars, Jake protested. Well, maybe small ones. Grunder and Lyris stared at him. That was a joke, Jake said. They did not look convinced. Over the next few weeks, Jake became the most talked about being on station, Meridian 7. Every meal in the cafeteria came with questions from curious aliens. Every training session came with observers watching his every move. Jake tried to stay humble. He tried to be kind to everyone he met. He answered questions honestly and helped other recruits when he could. But the more time passed, the more he realized something important. Being human was not just about physical strength. It was about something deeper. Something that had nothing to do with muscles or bones. It was about never giving up. Never accepting defeat. Always pushing forward, no matter how hard things got. And that, Jake was beginning to understand, might be the most human thing of all. 3 months had passed since Jake arrived at Station Meridian 7. In that time, he had gone from unknown recruit to station legend. And he still did not understand why. The advanced training division was harder than regular training. The exercises were longer. The tests were more dangerous. The instructors were less forgiving. But Jake handled it all without complaint. Today's exercise was zero-gravity combat. The recruits floated in a large chamber where the artificial gravity had been turned off. Their goal was simple: reach the flag at the center of the room. Before the other team, Jake pushed off a wall and floated toward the flag. Around him, aliens from a dozen species tumbled and spun, struggling to control their movements. Zero gravity was difficult for most beings. Their bodies did not know which way was up, but Jake adapted quickly. He used his arms and legs to push off surfaces, change direction, and move with purpose. Within minutes, he had figured out the basics. Within an hour, he was moving like he had been born in space. How are you doing that? Asked a Stellan named Rivos, who was spinning helplessly nearby. Jake grabbed him and stopped his rotation. You have to think about momentum. Every push sends you in a direction. Every movement has a reaction. I know the physics. My body just will not listen. Try closing your eyes. Focus on where you want to go, then open them and push gently. Rivos tried it. To his surprise, it worked. Thanks, human. Jake smiled and continued toward the flag. He reached it first, winning the exercise for his team. Afterward, the instructor, a scarred veteran named Captain Morix, pulled Jake aside. You adapted faster than anyone I have ever seen, Morix said. Most species take weeks to function in zero gravity. You did it in an hour. I do not know why, Jake admitted. It just felt natural. Your species is persistent. Morix studied him with interest. The reports say humans evolved to track prey across long distances, over varied terrain for days at a time. Your bodies and minds are built to adapt. I guess that makes sense. It makes you valuable. Morix handed Jake a small badge. Congratulations, Private. You have been selected for the survival simulation. The survival simulation was the hardest test at the station. Recruits were dropped on a hostile planet and left alone for 3 days. They had to find food, water, shelter, and avoid dangerous wildlife. Many recruits failed. Some had to be rescued. Jake was dropped on a planet called Nexus 4. It was a jungle world, hot and humid, with dense vegetation and strange animals. He landed in a clearing and immediately started working. First, he found a stream for water. He drank carefully, knowing that alien water might make him sick. When it did not kill him after a few hours, he drank more. Next, he built a shelter. He used large leaves and fallen branches to create a small hut that would keep out rain and wind. It was not pretty, but it was functional. Then he found food. He did not know which plants were safe to eat, so he focused on fishing. The stream had small creatures that looked like fish. He made a spear from a sharp rock and a stick, then waited patiently at the water's edge. It took a few hours, but eventually he caught 3 fish. He started a fire using friction, just like he had learned in Boy Scouts, and cooked his meal. By the end of the first day, Jake had everything he needed to survive. The other recruits were not so lucky. Through the communication device he had been given, Jake heard reports of others struggling. Some could not find water. Some could not make shelter. Some were too scared to sleep. On the second day, Jake went exploring. He found fruits that looked edible and tested them carefully. He found a cave that would make a better shelter. He even found signs of large animals, but he avoided them. On the third day, he was rescued right on schedule. The retrieval team found him sitting by a campfire, cooking another fish. "Did you have any problems?" the team leader asked. "Not really," Jake said. "It was actually kind of nice. Reminded me of camping back home." The team leader stared at him. "This planet has Category 3 predators and toxic vegetation." "Oh, I did not meet any predators. And I was careful about what I ate." When the results came in, Jake had scored higher than any recruit in 20 years. He had not just survived. He had thrived. But the test that really made Jake famous was the stress endurance evaluation. This test was simple but brutal. Recruits sat in a room while machines created stressful situations. Loud noises, flashing lights, uncomfortable temperatures, scary images. The goal was to see how long they could stay calm. The average time was 2 hours. The station record was 6 hours, held by a species known for their mental discipline. Jake sat in the chair and let the test begin. The first hour was annoying but manageable. Loud sounds and bright lights. Jake closed his eyes and thought about fishing. The second hour was harder. The temperature kept changing from hot to cold. Unpleasant smells filled the air. Jake breathed slowly and thought about his family. The third hour introduced fear elements. Images of monsters and dangerous situations flashed on screens around him. Jake recognized them as fake and ignored them. The fourth hour, the fifth hour, the sixth hour. Jake remained calm. His heart rate stayed steady. His breathing stayed normal. The proctors could not believe it. They kept the test running, wanting to see when he would break. 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours. Finally, after 12 hours, they stopped the test. Not because Jake had failed, but because they were worried about the machine overheating. Jake stood up and stretched. "Is something wrong? Did I do something bad?" "No," the head proctor said slowly. "You just broke the station record by 6 hours, while barely showing any stress response." "Oh," Jake shrugged. "I just tried to stay calm. Got a lot of practice with that growing up." "What do you mean?" Jake thought about how to explain. "Well, Earth can be pretty stressful. Bad weather, money problems, work stress. You learn to deal with it. My dad always said, worrying does not help anything. You just have to breathe and handle things one at a time." The proctor wrote down every word. Later that night, Jake sat in the common room with Lyris and Grundar. They had become his closest friends over the past 3 months. 12 hours, Grundar said, shaking his head. 12 hours in the stress chamber. I lasted 40 minutes. I am sure you did your best. My best was pathetic. But Grundar was smiling. He had stopped comparing himself to Jake weeks ago. Now he just enjoyed having such an unusual friend. Lyris was reading her notes on her device. I have been studying humans since you arrived. I think I finally understand your species. Really? Tell me. I would like to understand us too. Humans are not the strongest species, Lyris said. Some species are stronger. Humans are not the fastest. Some species are faster. Humans are not the smartest. Some species are smarter. This is not making me feel great, Jake said with a laugh. But, Lyris continued, humans are the most stubborn, the most adaptable, the most persistent. When other species face a challenge, they ask if they can do it. Humans face a challenge and decide they will do it, whether it should be possible or not. Jake thought about that. I guess we do not like giving up. Exactly. You do not accept limits. You do not accept impossible. You just keep trying until you succeed or die. Lyris put down her device. That is both amazing and terrifying. Thank you. It was a compliment. She smiled her small smile. Mostly. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning, filled with billions of humans who had no idea how remarkable they were. And Jake Thompson, former construction worker from Ohio, was about to show the galaxy just what humans could really do. The alarm tore through the station at 3 in the morning. Jake was on his feet before his eyes were fully open. His body knew what to do even when his mind was still waking up. Enemy attack in Sector 7. Commander Velox's voice echoed through the speakers. All recruits to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Jake grabbed his equipment and ran into the hallway. Other recruits were doing the same, their faces showing fear and confusion. Some species did not wake up quickly. They stumbled and bumped into walls. Jake found Lyris in the crowd and grabbed her arm. Stay close to me. What is happening? Her voice was high with panic. I do not know. Just stay close. They moved through the station towards Sector 7. The lights were flashing red. Warning sounds filled the air. It felt like the end of the world. When they reached Sector 7, chaos had already started. Automated drones. The enemies for this exercise were everywhere. They fired stun beams that knocked out any recruit they hit. Bodies lay on the ground, their training sensors blinking red to show they were dead or injured. Jake did not know this was actually the final test. To him, this was real. This was war. Find cover. He shouted to the recruits around him. He pushed Lyris behind a metal crate and looked for the enemy. 3 drones were coming down the hallway. Jake picked up a piece of debris and threw it hard. It hit the first drone and knocked it off course. It crashed into the wall. How did you do that? Someone asked. Jake did not answer. He was already moving, running toward the next drone. It fired at him, but he ducked and rolled under the beam. He came up swinging and smashed the drone with his fist. Pain shot through his hand. These things were made of metal. But the drone went down. The third drone tried to escape. Jake chased it down the hallway, caught it, and threw it into the ground. It shattered into pieces. More recruits had gathered now. They looked at Jake with wide eyes. What are you waiting for? Jake shouted. Fight back. That seemed to wake them up. Soon, recruits were working together, taking down drones and pushing forward through the sector. Jake led from the front. He did not think about being scared. He did not think about the danger. He just moved and fought and protected the people around him. Then the building shook. A massive explosion sounded somewhere nearby. The floor tilted. The ceiling cracked. What was that? Grundor appeared at Jake's side, his gray skin covered in dust. Before Jake could answer, another explosion hit. This time, part of the ceiling came down, right on top of Lyris and 2 other recruits. Jake screamed her name and ran toward the pile of debris. The dust was thick. He could barely see, but he could hear voices calling for help. "Lyris, where are you?" "Here." Her voice was weak. "I am trapped. There is a beam on my legs." Jake found her. She was lying on the ground, a massive support beam pinning her lower body. Her silver fur was gray with dust. Her dark eyes were filled with pain and fear. 2 other recruits were trapped nearby. A Stellan with a broken arm. A Karth who was barely conscious. Instructors rushed over. "We need lifting equipment. Someone call for tools. There is no time." Jake shouted. "The beam is crushing her." He looked at the massive piece of metal. It was huge. Much bigger than the weight from his first assessment. Much heavier. He did not care. Jake positioned himself under the beam. He found a grip. He braced his legs, and he lifted. Every muscle in his body screamed. His back felt like it was being torn apart. His arms shook with effort. Sweat poured down his face, but the beam moved. Slowly, painfully, it rose. "Now." Jake shouted through gritted teeth. "Get them out now." Other recruits rushed in. They pulled Lyris free. They dragged out the Stellan. They carried away the Karth. "Clear." Someone shouted. "Jake, let go." The beam crashed down with a sound like thunder. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. His arms hung limp at his sides. Lyris crawled over to him. Her legs were bruised but not broken. Tears streamed down her face. "Jake, you saved me. You saved all of us." Jake could not speak. He just nodded. Medical teams arrived and took the injured away. The drill ended. The lights stopped flashing. And the truth came out. It had been a test. The final assessment. The drones, the explosions, the chaos. All of it was planned, but the collapse had not been planned. The beam that fell was real. The danger was real. And Jake had lifted it anyway. The structural sensors had measured the weight. 2,400 kilograms. Nearly 5 times the standard assessment weight. Commander Velox stood among the officers, watching as Jake was helped to his feet. The commander's eyes were unreadable, but his mandibles had stopped clicking. "Private Thompson," he said finally. Jake stood at attention, even though his body was screaming for rest. "Yes, sir. You are no longer a private. Effective immediately, you are promoted to squad leader. The first human to hold such a rank in coalition history." A cheer went up from the recruits who had gathered. Jake did not feel like celebrating. He just felt tired. Later, when things had calmed down, Lyris found him sitting alone in the medical bay. His arms were wrapped in bandages. The doctors said he had torn several muscles. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I have been better." Jake tried to smile. "How are your legs?" "They will heal. Thanks to you." She sat down next to him. "Why did you do it? You could have waited for the equipment. You could have let someone else try." Jake thought about the question. It was a good question. "I did not think about it," he said finally. "I just saw you were in trouble. And I knew I had to help. But the weight, the pain, how did you push through it?" "I do not know. I just did not stop." He looked at his bandaged arms. "My dad used to say that giving up is the only way to truly fail. As long as you keep trying, you always have a chance." Lyris was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think that is the most human thing I have ever heard." The graduation ceremony happened 3 weeks later. Jake stood on a stage with the other successful recruits. His arms had healed, though they still ached sometimes. Commander Velox gave a speech about duty and honor and sacrifice. Jake listened politely, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about home, about Earth, about all the people who had no idea what he had done. When the ceremony ended, The new soldiers spread across the galaxy. They would serve on ships and stations and planets throughout Coalition space. But wherever they went, they would tell stories. Stories about the human who lifted the impossible weight. The human who did not give up. The human who saved his friends because it never occurred to him not to try. And those stories would spread to other stations, to other species, to worlds that had never seen a human before. 3 years later, humans had become the most requested species for special operations. Not because they were invincible. They were not. Humans could be hurt. Humans could be killed. Humans were fragile in many ways, but they were requested because they never gave up. When a mission was impossible, humans found a way. When everyone else said it could not be done, humans did it anyway. General Velox, as he was now called, often told new recruits about the human who started it all. The construction worker from Ohio who did not know he was strong, who thought he was average, who changed how the galaxy saw his entire species. Humans are not the strongest, Velox would say. They are not the fastest or the smartest, but they are the most stubborn, the most determined, the most unwilling to accept defeat. He would pause and let the words sink in. In a universe that wants you dead, that stubbornness might be the greatest weapon of all. Somewhere in the galaxy, Jake Thompson was probably helping someone, lifting something heavy, making friends with aliens who could not believe what they were seeing. Some things never changed, and humanity was just getting started.